Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. This is our last Quiltmas in July video. We have a replay of the Brooke Wristlet. This is another really fast, fun bag project that's very giftable because you don't need a lot of fabric and it sews together really fast. This one has a new skill set that we haven't used before. We're going to use a template in order to create the dimension of this bag, and it is really fun, really fast. This one uses fat 8s for the outside and the lining, and then we also have a handle that attaches to our zipper pull. So we have very special donut hole zippers that will go with this kit if you decide to get one. I will tell you our previous kits that we put out are going very fast because they are really low priced, which means they make great gifts, and you purchase the pattern separately so that you can get one pattern and as many kits as you want so you can gift them this holiday season. These are really adorable. We're going to take a peek at them real quick, but make sure you stay tuned to watch that tutorial. And it's just a lot of fun. These bags like this, they're adorable, they're cute, they can be customized any which way. But if you get it from us, you get everything you need. You get your outer, your lining, your zipper, and teeth that coordinate, and your hardware. So it's all included. It all works for you. We've even installed the zipper pulls for you so you don't have to. So let's take a peek at some of the options that we have today, and then we will get these going so you guys can learn how to make them and make a whole bunch up for the holidays. So this is what I mean where the bag has some dimension to it. It's really a lot of fun, and it won't quite stand up on its own, but you really can fit quite a lot in one of these. And this first collection was just kitten around by Monica Forsberg. She's a designer for Free Spirit Fabric, and we've made 4 variations using that collection. This one is great for anybody who really loves flowers and botanicals, and that zipper tape just matches perfectly with the purple that is in the fabric there. And that gold also coordinates perfectly with this little orangey stripe that we have going on. On the inside, we have some nice little teal birds. It's a nice light lining so you can see everything that's inside. And as you can see, there was nothing inside this bag. It is holding its shape because of the decor bond that is inside. That also comes if you get a kit from us. It's absolutely everything you need to make it. But it does not hold this forever. It does get a little softer with use, but it definitely will maintain its shape as you go. This was one of my favorite fabrics from the line. I really love this striped design. I thought this would make a great tunic too. And for this one, we also have that rose gold and that purple, which matches beautifully. And on the inside, we have a little surprise. There's big kitty cats on the inside. So this could be great for your cat loving friends. Now, for someone who wants to be more obvious with their cat loving, we have a bunch of little kitty cats driving cars, so that's fun. We also still have that purple zipper with the rose gold zipper tape. It just looks great with most of the fabrics in this collection. And on the inside, we have that same print that we saw earlier, but it's more of a seafoam background. Still pretty light so you can see everything on the inside. Now this is one of the busier ones. There is a lot going on in this panel, and I know that the designer, is very inspired by like silk scarves. So this reminds me of like one of those fancy scarves that you would get that you would either tie in your hair or put on a bag or something. And it is just gorgeous. There's just so much going on. It's really pretty. And again, that rose gold and purple, which looks great with this. And the inside we have pink with the bird print again. Here's another one for those cat lovers. This one just has a bunch of cats with bow ties. It's very bright, very fun. This time we have a blue zipper tape with a nickel zipper finish. And all these zippers, by the way, they have a metal look, but they are plastic, which means that they behave very nicely. The zipper pulls and the rest of the hardware, though, are metal, so they're going to wear very nicely over time. And then we have that striped crossover on the inside, though, this time with a nice blue. It coordinates perfectly with this outer fabric. We had a little bit of fabric left over from Fiesta horses for the latest Laurel Birch line, so we decided to make some with this. This is the one that we have the fewest of, so you're going to want to make sure you go and grab them if it's something that you like. It almost looks like Picasso horses because you can see both sides of their face at the same time, and then there's all this outlining in gold metallic. Whenever we've done bags with Laurel Birch before, they go super fast, so grab this if you want. And for this one, since it had gold metallic, we chose a gold zipper tape, again with that purple, to match with the purple on the inside. And then the inside is this really moody fabric. It's really fun and goes great with this. All right, we have that same print, but this time in a more caramel and golden colorway. It is gorgeous. It reminds me of a Southwest sunset. And again, it still has that gold metallic. So this time we have a nice tan zipper tape with the gold on top to coordinate. And on the inside, we have some more dancing horses. They're really pretty and also have that metallic. So really fun, really gorgeous. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the kits we put together for the Brooke Wristlet. Again, you can grab as many kits as you want and then grab the patterns separately. That way you just get one pattern and as many kits as you want, so you can make a whole bunch for your family and friends or yourself. And all right, with that, let's watch the replay and have fun making this super simple bag. So I've already cut all of my pieces to size as dictated in the pattern, so make sure you get that to go along with it. I'm using a canvas for my outside, and I made sure to cut it so that my little cat here, my motif, is dead center. And you want to think about that whenever you're cutting something, is if there's a specific design on it, if you can line it up any way you can. So what I kind of did was I took my width measurement and I made sure that half of that was right in line with the center of this cat as I was cutting it, and then I kind of eyeballed it from top to bottom as well. So what sets apart a bag that looks homemade versus a really cute bag that looks like you could have gotten it in the store is what's on the inside. And we are using some decor bond interfacing here. It's going to really give everything a nice stiff appearance, help it last longer, and especially paired with this canvas, it's going to be very durable and last a long time with minimal wear and tear. So this is fusible, and it's probably going to be hard to pick up on camera, but the fusible side is always a little shinier. So you want to lay it so that the shiny side is up, facing the wrong side of your fabric, and then the right side of your fabric should be up as well. So I'm just kind of lining that up, getting everything where it should be. Ideally, these should have been cut to the same size, but occasionally they get a little different. Now, the reason why you want to have the shiny side up and the right side of your fabric up is this way, if you accidentally flip the interfacing going the wrong way, you're just going to fuse it to your ironing surface instead of your iron, and that is a lot easier to fix and clean up later. All right, so I've got my iron on a really hot setting, and starting at one side, I'm getting those corners fused down and the sides. And then I'm just kind of working my way over. Another benefit to ironing this way when you're fusing it down is you don't have any wrinkles in the top fabric, whereas if you iron from the other side, sometimes you can fuse in a wrinkle and then you're stuck with it, and that's no good. So you want to pay close attention to the sides and the edges, because that's where it's going to be really matter the most. All right, so I've got it fused. I'm just going to check my edges here. I'm just kind of taking a peek around the edges, making sure everything is fused nicely, and it is. If it wasn't, just, you know, add a little bit more heat to it until you're ready to go. Definitely feels a lot stiffer. It already was stiff because of the canvas, but now it's really going to be nice and sturdy and really hold up well over time. I'm going to go ahead and do that with my other outside piece and my two lining pieces as well. So your pattern is going to come with a template that is going to show you what size you need to cut it to, and then there's also some darts as well that get sewn into this one. It comes on just regular paper, so if you want, you can always trace this onto a Mylar template. We used this a couple of videos ago when we did curved seams. This stuff is really great because it doesn't melt with the iron, and it's great for making templates like this. So if you think you're going to make a lot of these as gifts or something, definitely worth going and getting the Mylar template, and then you can just cut and make yourself one of these that isn't going to get cut up or messed up over time. For the video, for this one, I'm just going to use the paper that came with it, and then I'm going to put it back in my pattern to store it with later. So here's what I'm going to do to make this work is I've got it laid out here, and I'm going to put a pair of scissors on there to kind of hold that in place. Then carefully using my rotary cutter, because this is just the paper, so I don't want to cut it and make it smaller. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around the edges, and I'm just kind of holding my fingertips to kind of keep that in place. This is whenever I'm cutting garments, I kind of do that the same way. In that instance, I will pin through because that tissue paper is a little thinner. Give it a little turn. All right, so now we've got the basic shape of the bag, but I need to mark these darts. So I'm using a friction gel pen here. When I get to the black part, I'm going to use my Soebbing chalk pencil that's white. And I'm just gonna mark these darts, and I'm just going to mark along the edges of it. It doesn't really matter if your marking tool goes away, so you could use a pencil too if you wanted, because this is going to be in the seam allowance. But I'm just marking that. So that way when I take my template away, I've got my little marks here, and then I can take a pair of really sharp embroidery scissors. I really like these micro tips because they're spring loaded, and I can just cut along that and get right up into the point without going too far, and just snip that out. Do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm going to repeat for my other inside and then also my outers. When you get to use directional fabrics, there is a nice little bit here that says top, so make sure that that is at the top of whatever your directional fabric is so you cut it correctly. All right, so I've got everything all trimmed down and my corners cut out for those little darts on the side. I definitely trimmed a little bit off the bottom as I was kind of going around those curves. So if you intend on making a bunch of these and you would like them to all be the same size and not get a little smaller with each one, I definitely would pick up some of this heat resistant Mylar template. It's really great. It's plastic sheets. You can cut it to size, and then when you're going around with your rotary cutter, it's not going to get smaller little by little each time. It's going to stay the size that you intend it to be. So I'm going to set my pieces to the side for now, and now we're going to do a removable strap. You have two options for this. You can use more of your outer fabric or an accent fabric, and you can add your interfacing to the back of it, fold it over twice and top stitch down, or you can use a scrap of cork fabric. Cork fabric is fabulous. It comes in lots of different colors. I'm using black with some silver accents for this one because I think it'll look really cute with this outside piece. And in this case, you only need a tiny little bit, but we sell it in one size, and you can use it for many different projects, and then you can use the leftover bits for things like this, so no bit goes to waste. A little bit about cork fabric. You can do pretty much anything you can do with regular fabric with it. It folds, it bends, it does all the things like normal fabric would do. You just need a jeans needle to stitch with it, and I would use binding clips instead of pins when you are going over it. But it is great for bags, and especially the areas of bags where there's going to get more wear and tear. So like a bag bottom or the wrist, the strap for this case, because it's just sturdier fabric. It is actually from a tree in Portugal. They harvest it, and it is good for the tree when they remove the bark. It doubles the CO2 that it absorbs, and then they don't harvest that tree again for another 20 years. So they're very responsible in the way that they create the cork, and then also it's very eco-friendly and good for the environment. So when you're doing the cork, instead of having to fold it over 4 times, you just have to fold it in half one time because the edges of the cork do not fray. And so I'm just going to stitch an 1/8 of an inch seam down both sides of this cork. And if you want, you can use some binding clips to hold that in place as you're going. One other thing that I find really helpful in order to get really good top stitching is I'm using a foot with a 1/4 inch seam guide. These come with a lot of machines. It's got usually this black little bit on the side. And so that way I can just snug this up against the edge of the fabric that I'm sewing with, and it won't go beyond the guide. I normally hate these with a passion for regular quilting because I feel like the guide gets in the way of your pins and you can't get an accurate join or anything with them. But for anything that you need really great top stitching for, and it needs to be accurate and look as professional as possible, like it's a real bag that you bought in the store, these are fabulous because you can just snug it up right in there and then you are good to go. I'm also using matching thread for this section. I'm going to use a little bit of gray so that way it pops just a little bit and we see a little bit of color. So check your individual foot because you don't want to break a needle with this. But what I do is I set my sewing machine to a regular 1/4 inch stitch, and then I just keep moving my needle over until it's going to hit that guide on the foot, because I don't want to hit the guide on the foot because then I'll break a needle. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold this in half. And again, if you want, you can use binding clips in order to do that, and I'll trim this little thread later. But I've just got it folded in half here so that my long edges are even. I'm going to slide that down. And I am going to top stitch this, or back stitch this. So just sew in place a little bit, make sure those stitches are really secure. This is not quilting where you're going to be going over things a million times. You want to make sure that your thread ends are really secure by doing back stitching at the beginning and end of your seams. So I've just got my edges, and I'm doing the folded side first where the edges are coming together. I've got that lined up with this black guide. I'm just kind of folding as I go. All right, so now you can see I've got a really nice and even top stitching going all the way down that, and it's nice and even with the edge, and I was able to get that with that foot. I'm going to take it off and go to a regular foot now. You could also sew down the sides if you wanted to. You could really just do a lot of fun things with this. I suppose I'll do one more going down the other side so we have 2 lines. All right, and we've got a nice double stitching line going on there. It looks really neat, really professional, and it's because we are using that thread there. All right, so I'm going to take this foot off, and I'm going to put my regular foot on that I use for piecing and get it back to that regular 1/4 inch stitch for the darts. So when you're pinning darts, what you want to do is put your right sides together here, and you're going to match up the edges of your bag first. And this gives it a little bit of shape and definition at the bottom of the bag, so it's not just a super flat thing. And I'm just pinning in there, and then I'm also going to pin a little bit beyond where the edge is, just to kind of keep that flat edge going. And we can press that out later if we need to. So we've got that in place. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then I'm going to work through all the others so that way I can sew everything all at once. All right, so this is what it looks like when I've got it, my darts pinned. It's looking a little funny right now, but it'll give it some really good shape and definition. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to sew a regular 1/4 inch seam across this, and I'm going to actually go ahead and start from this side. I'm going to start from the outside of the bag, and on my machine I can set it up so that it will automatically backstitch and cut my threads for me every time I start my seam. If your machine does that, then that's going to be awesome for this next step. If not, you're going to have to remember to backstitch every time you start. All right, so I've got that done. Let's pull that out. So what I'm doing here is I am just stitching right along the edge, and then I'm continuing to go forward until I hit where that fold is. And then sew it off a little. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit so that the back stitching can happen in the fabric. So let's take a closer look at that here. So I started here and then I stitched forward. So the end of the cut part of the dart is here, but I continued sewing so that my 1/4 inch was even with this until I sewed off this folded part here. And so that way I'm going to have some really good definition with the bottom of that bag, and I know where to stop. Now I'm going to repeat that on the other side and do all the rest of my bags as well. All right, so I got one done. I'm going to go ahead and poke the bottoms out here. So now you can see this is what it looked like before. It was all inside. When I poke it out, it gives some nice body, some nice definition. You can really see how this bag is going to come together. And it is really stiff, like it is holding this shape all on its own thanks to that interfacing combined with the canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of my bottoms, and then we'll be good to go. All right, so now it's time to install a zipper. I know this can be scary, but it's going to be just fine, I promise. So I have 24-inch zippers here. You just need one that's at least as long as the pattern calls for, because you can always trim it down later. We have these ones by Annie. I really like them. They come in lots of different colors. I chose black for this one because, again, it coordinates with the exterior, but we have lots of ones that will work with whatever fabric it is that you choose. All right, so what I want to do is have the right side of my fabric up, and I'm going to flip my zipper so that the teeth side are going down, and I'm making sure that my zipper pull is hanging off to the side. And that is because it is a lot easier to sew a zipper on if your zipper pull is not in the way. And this is plenty long enough, so we're gonna be just fine. We don't have to worry about that. So it doesn't need to be centered or anything. It just needs to be on there. So now I'm gonna pin this in place here. Kind of just working my way down. Now we're going to take our lining and we're going to put it right sides together with the fabric. So the right side is going to be down. We're going to see the interfacing side on the way up. And then I'm going to repin. I'm going to line up those corners and just sort of rework my way down. In this case, though, since I already got that zipper all nice and in line, I'm going to go ahead and line up those corners and get everything together here. And then just repin through all layers, both the inside, the outside, and that zipper, making sure all my edges stay nice and aligned. All right, so Jessica's is not heavy using a zipper foot for this. So if that thing intimidates you, if they see that foot and you're like, oh my gosh, what is that? Don't worry, we're just using our 1/4-inch stitch in our 1/4-inch stitch setting, and we're gonna stitch all the way along the top, back stitching again at the front and at the end of that seam, so that way everything stays really nice and secure and this bag is going to last for a long time. All right, so I'm starting right where those fabrics began, so the back stitching is on the fabrics, and just make sure you remove your pins as you come to them, sewing the 1/4 inch away from everything. Alright, so I've come to the end here. I'm going to make sure I back stitch again, get everything nice and secure, trim those threads. Now here's a really good tip. What you want to do here is open this up, and everything should be going correctly at this point. So if you have it where the outside is there, the top of the zipper is here, and if we flip it over, we see our inside, so that's great. And in this case, you got plenty of space in between here and the edge, but you can always, if you're concerned about your zipper being able to open, just open it up, because if you've sewn over any of those zipper teeth, then your zipper will not function. All right, so I'm going to give this a little bit of a press here before I move on to sewing the other side. It really, because this canvas and the home decor bond is so thick, it really just kind of wants to fold over like that. But I'm going to hit it with the iron as well. And you can iron over your zipper, so don't worry about that. You're not going to melt it or anything. Don't like stay on it forever and ever, but you can do that. Get the other side too. Get that nice and stitched. All right, so it's time to repeat with the other side. So first what we're going to do is we've got our bag right side up again. We're going to flip it over, and this time I want to make sure that my edges are even with the edges of the piece below it. So I can see underneath here that I've got that in line, and then my edges are even with the top. So now I'm going to take a little pin and get that secured here. And I'm going to work all the way down, and again I'm going to line those edges up here on the sides, and then also make sure the top is even with the top of my zipper tape. So now for this point, because we've already worked all the way down what we did the first side, so at this point I can kind of divide and conquer. So I can get to the middle and pin that in place, and then I go halfway in between the middle and that side, And just really securing all those layers together and making sure that my edges are nice and even. If you're ever concerned that things are working out right, you can always open it up, and you should always have your outside pieces together with the top of the zipper, and then your lining pieces are going to be facing out this way. So now if we flip it over like this, our lining piece from the first half is sewn up. So I'm going to flip this so that my lining pieces are now right sides together. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before, where I'm lining up with the edge from here. I've got all my corners together, and I'm just going to repin that, keeping the edges of my lining, my outside, and my zipper all at the same place. And then repeat on this side. Then I'm going to repin as I work my way down, starting with the center. And then working my way out. Just to repeat one more time, because this is sad if you screwed up. If you, at this point, when you open it up, you should see your two outside pieces and the top of your zipper. And then if you look at it from this way, your two lining pieces should be right sides together, and you should be seeing the bottom of your zipper. So you can see the bottom of the zipper pull there. So as long as you're seeing that, then you're going to be okay and you are good to sew. And again, we're going to sew right down this side, and we're going to backstitch at the top and at the bottom. All right, so I'm starting at the very edge here. I'm going to backstitch so that way that is nice and secure. And then sewing a 1/4 inch seam, I'm just working my way down, making sure all my edges continue to stay nice and even, and my seam is nice and accurate. And there is a ton, you know, coming up over here. It's kind of weird to manage when you're used to a nice flat quilt, but it's totally doable. All right, I've reached the end. I'm going to go ahead and back stitch again. Put those threads. All right, so just like on the other side, we want to press these so that they're going out, and that way we can press the edges down here. So I kind of finger press this first, just like I did on the other side. Then I'm going to take my iron. I'm going to go down the center of that and just kind of give it some heat to help it stay there. Repeat on the back. All right, I'm going to do a little top stitching along here. You want to do an 1/8 of an inch stitch. I'm going to put that 1/4 inch foot that has the guide back on, so that way the guide can just sit right along in here, and I'll have a very perfect professional looking top stitch. So you don't need to reinforce your stitches here because this is mostly decorative. But what I've got going on here is I've got this guide right in line with the edge of the seam allowance, and I'm just stitching along. And I'm not really even looking at my needle. I am looking at that guide to make sure that that guide is right in the channel where we press that fold over. Oh yeah, that's looking nice. Very nice, very professional, very straight. It's looking good. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, so at this point, we're gonna start sewing our edges together. And before we do that, we've gotta pull our zipper in so that way we don't cut off the zipper pull when we get to the edge. I'm also gonna cut this off at this point as well. So I'm just gonna cut my zipper teeth off here and here. I like to use my paper scissors for that so I don't dull anything else too fast. All right, so at this point, we're gonna put our right sides together for our outside and our inside. So our bag is gonna look a little bit like this at this point. What I wanna do is take these darts and arrange them so that one end is going to the left and the other half is going to the right. That makes it really easy to nest those seams, just like if we were quilting. I'm gonna go ahead and put a pin in here to keep that nice and secure. I always like to pin on the left side of the seam allowance because I feel like I'm going to get to that second. All right, so I'm going to keep doing that, going around. There's only 4 little bits to pin, so not bad. It is a little tricky to manage just because you have so much stiffness with the interfacing and the canvas, but it's really going to make for a really great finish in the end. All right, so continue getting those nested in and going in opposite directions. All right, so there's one last thing we have to do and then we're ready to sew this up. And that is we've got to get these zipper teeth going so that they're going to the lining side of everything. So what I'm doing here is I'm lining up my zipper teeth. So you can see they are lined up there. And then also the top is lined up as well. And then I'm just going to put a little pin in right there to keep everything nice and stable where it should be. I'm also going to put one right above where these guys go together. Just a little double pin. Have it come a little bit better. And then do the same thing on the other side. What this does is it will ensure that the zippers kind of go to the inside of your bag. All right, so when we sew this, we need to leave the bottom open for turning. So you can either mark that, or I like to just put a little pin. You want to put it past where the darts are because you don't want to have to sew those by hand. But what you do want to do here is just put a little pin so you've got your start and your stop. So that way you've got enough to reach in and turn everything. You basically want a hole that's large enough to where you can reach your hand in so you can grab everything and turn it right sides out. All right, so I'm going to start here. I'm going to back stitch, go all the way around, and then stop and back stitch here as well. Then we're going to turn it right sides out. And I'm just using a 1/4 inch stitch for this. If you wanted to do additional pinning, you absolutely could. This is really stiff material. It's not going anywhere at this point by the time we've got all that interfacing in there. So I'm pretty confident it's not going to shift on me, but if you like to pin more, by all means do it. I went ahead and put my regular press-a-foot back on again. And again, that's because I don't like that guide for when we need to have sharp pins and sharp points, and we definitely need to get as close to those darts as possible, and I feel like that guide makes that difficult when you have pins in there. All right, so I'm going to flatten this out as much as I can. It may be difficult to see from our side camera here, but what I'm doing here is I am just starting where that pin was. I'm going to go ahead and reinforce those stitches. Let's see if I can flatten this out so you can see from the side here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch, 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 and just like if we were doing quilting, I sewed until I got into the left side of that dart, so like the left side of that seam allowance, and then I'm going to pull my pin because that needle is kind of acting like a pin and making sure those darts stay really nicely together. All right, so I'm going to go nicely around this curve. It's on a race. Okay, so I always like to slow down when I get to my zipper. Flatten this out so you can see a little better. Because you can sew right over a zipper. It's not going to break your needle or anything like that. But you kind of want to take it easy. You don't want to go full force over it. Otherwise, it's just kind of hard on your sewing machine. So I'm going to go a little slower as I go through this bulky area. And then I can kind of speed up as I go along here until I get to the next dart. So I'm just going to keep doing that until I get all the way around. All right, I made it all the way around, so I'm going to reinforce those stitches so that I don't rip anything out by accident when I'm turning it right side out. And now the fun part, the big reveal. All right, so you want to do this gently so that you don't rip those stitches out. But I'm going to reach in here and I kind of have to scooch the zipper over a little bit more. And I'm just going to gently pull this out. And again, you need to be as gentle as you can because you don't want to rip out those stitches at the turning point because those darts are really close to it. So you don't want to have to resew those by hand. That would not be fun. So I'm just kind of going slow and steady. Oh, and I ripped him, of course. All right, so before I get this all nice and pretty, what I'm going to do is sew this inside while it's still sticking out. So what I like to do for that is just kind of fold it in, and if you kind of put your fingers at the edges like this, that will kind of start to turn in for you. So in this case, this guy's turning down real nicely. I'm just going to put a pin in just that 1/2. You can kind of eyeball what the 1/4 inch is because it's the bottom of the bag. No one's going to inspect it unless they're like really digging for their keys. And then I'm just going to fold this side down about the same, and then I'm going to get these together and lined up as best I can here. All right, so we've got that pinned together. I'm going to pin it again about 1/4 of the way between that and where I left that opening for turning. All right, this is the side where the stitching did rip back almost to the dart. So I'm going to kind of pull that together as best I can. Give that a pin too. Now you have 2 options at this point. You can just do a top stitch really close to the edge here, and that's fine. That would go really fast. I really like to sew this part by hand, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get as close to match as I can to my lining and my thimble, and I'm just going to real quick whip stitch this together and show you how to do that. All right, so I'm going to start in this corner because this is kind of the problem corner where it kind of got pulled a little bit. I'm going to put my needle in from the side here and come out at the top. That way I can kind of hide my knot inside, just like I would if I were doing binding. So kind of pop that through. All right. So my knot has now popped on the inside of there. All right, so you can see where my stitches have pulled there. So I'm going to do a little bit smaller stitches here, just so that it is really, really secure in there. And I'm just trying to make sure that I hit both sides. And this is more challenging to do right in that edge because there's so much fabric with those darts. It is definitely easier to stitch through once you get a little bit further in. But what I'm doing is I'm just picking up a little bit of thread from one side, a little bit along the side from the other. It's really close together, and just pushing that needle through. And when these pins start to get in the way, just remove them, because you want to be able to pinch your fabrics together, and because of all the interfacing, it's not like it's going to flop around a ton. All right, so I'm about a stitch or two beyond where I stopped. You can see where that gray thread is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tie off, and by doing that, I just wrap my thread 3 times around the needle, like so. Then you're going to pinch the wraps and pull forward like that. It creates a little knot. So now I can just sort of bury this thread in, pull my needle out a little ways down, and I can bury the knot just like we would if we were doing quilt binding. All right, now that that's done, we can finish stuffing our lining to the inside. And we want to also pull out our bag as we're doing this as well to get those gussets out as much as we can. And now we have a cute little kitty wristlet. And all that's left to do is add our little strap. All right, so I already top stitched everything earlier. Now I just have 1 more step to do, and well, 2 more steps to do, and then this is all done. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fold my strap in half so that my short ends are together. And I'm not going to pin this because it's so little. It's really easy to just kind of keep it together underneath the sewing machine. So I'm just kind of keeping those guys together. And I'm just going to slide that underneath. And then using a 1/4 inch stitch and a whole heck of a lot of reinforcement, I'm just going to sew over this. All right, so I reinforced a ton at the beginning, and I'm also going to reinforce a ton now that I'm at the end. And you're going to want to clip any stray threads. You can see there's quite a few here. Now I'm going to take a swivel hook. This one is in gunmetal because I really like the finish of that with the nice black everything else that's going on. So I'm just going to slide that in just like that. And you're going to fold it over, back just a little ways, not too far. I've got maybe an inch or so. Yeah, about an inch. And so now I'm gonna stitch again over this a ton in order to keep that nice and secure. I'm actually scooting this up just a little bit more. So I'm gonna stitch right over my stitching line from before and get that nice and set in there. Again, I'm not pinning, I'm just sliding this underneath, and I'm gonna sew the heck out of this baby. So do some reinforcing. Sew a little more. I'm gonna reinforce some more. All right, now to the end. I'm gonna reinforce some more here. Back it up even a little bit more and reinforce. You cannot reinforce enough on this thing, let me tell you. All right, we've got the cute little wrist strap all done. So now we can just clip this baby to the zipper and you are ready to go. Love this, it turned out so cute. It took me just over an hour to do, and we have so much canvas, and you can also do this with any quilting cotton, but I really love the canvas. So check it out. It doesn't take a ton of material, so it's a good first bag to do because you're not gonna be spending a ton of money on something that you're not sure if it's going to check out. Again, everything you need for this project, we have all the descriptions or all the products linked in the video description down below. If you like something, you want to give it a go, if you get the supplies from us, it helps support us and helps us be able to bring you new videos every week. And this one, we will also support Jessica Vandenberg because we are ordering all the patterns and the hardware directly from her over at So Many Creations. So lots of really cute stuff, and you can have lots of really beautifully finished handbags for yourself. So again, this is a real simple, pretty fast one for you to do, to give it a try, and we're gonna be coming out with more of them in the coming months. So stay tuned for more. We're gonna be making some bags. And until next week, happy quilting.